We begin today the Gemara on Daf Chofei Medalef, right at the second line from the top of the Yama. The Gemara here is discussing the halacha of an Evet Kanani that leaves his master if his master damaged the Rashi Evarim. You learn out from the Pasuk Shem V'ayin, if you knocked out an eye or a tooth, and we also compare and learn out that the same is any Rashi Evarim, different tips of the limbs that the master knocked out, he goes free. So the Gemara brings a story that happened, Sabi de Nezunya. The elders of the city Nezunya did not show up to the class, to the shir of Rav Chisda. And I guess it was the situation where they were expected to come, and this was a time that everybody made sure to be there, and they didn't come. So Rav Chisda says to Rav Amnuna, Zilt san inu, go and tell them to remain locked in their home. This is an expression that the Gemara uses when it wants to talk about a nidui, a sort of an excommunication for a Talmud Chacham, that because they didn't show up, they should remain in their home. Azal, so Rav Amnuna went to them, and Amalahu, so he says to these Sabi, to these elders, my time why didn't you come to the shir of Rav Chisda? Amrulei, so they answered him, Amai Naisi, why should we come? We asked him a shaila, V'lei pashatlan, and he didn't answer us the shaila. So if he doesn't have an answer, we're not coming. Amalahu, so Rav Amnuna says to them, Mi ba'isu minoi midi v'loi pashitin l'chu. Did you ask me a question that I couldn't answer you? So the Mefarshim say what he was basically saying is that Rav Amnuna was the Meturgeman. He's the one that used to give over the shir of Rav Chisda. So he's saying, if you ask, did you ask me a shaila and I didn't answer? If I can't answer, so then maybe it could be that Rav Chisda can't answer. But ask me, let's see if I can answer. If I can answer, for sure Rav Chisda could answer. So Amalahu, so so they asked him a shaila that they had. What was the shaila? So here, that's what the Gemara brought this. They asked him a shaila that relates to the halacha that we were discussing regarding an eved leaving his master if the master hurt him or knocked out an eved. Eved shesir say rabbi bebeitzim. If a master castrated his eved in the testicles, mahu. What's the halacha here? So before the Gemara said, we learned that from Shen V'ayin that only if it's something that there was a damage in the body of the eved which is exposed, which is you can see, then they go free. So the question is over here, kamum shebegali dami, is this considered to be a blemish which is open, or no, it's considered to be covered and therefore it's not a open blemish, so they don't go free. Loi have biyadei. So the Rav Amnuna challenged them, and he couldn't give the answer. Amru loi. So these elders said to him, Mashimcha, what's your name? Amr lohu. So he said, Hamnuna. My name is Hamnuna. Amru lei lav Hamnuna. Your name should not be Hamnuna, which would mean someone that's faithful, but ele karnuna. Your name should be karnuna, which means someone that's, Rashi says, a yeshiv karani, someone that sits in the corners with all the people that waste their time, and not people that are bali Torah, people that learn Torah. Also, so Rav Amnuna came to Rav Chisda with this question. What's the halacha in this case, whether the eved goes free? Amalei, Rav Chisda says, Masnite, that question you couldn't answer. They asked you a shaila, which is in a braisa. The Tanan, because it says, or actually here it's quoted as a Mishnah. So the Gemara says Masnita, which is usually a Braisa, but it says in the Mishnah that Esrim va'arbo Rashi Evarim Sheba'adam. There are 24 different tips of the limbs of a person. Kulam, and in all of these, what this Mishnah is speaking about, it's a Mishnah Masechta Negayim. It's regarding the nega, a michya, and the pasuk it says a michya is basachai. When you have a nega, color of a nega is usually white, but then there's the nega which has a michya, which has some live flesh in the middle of this nega, and that's actually a siman of tumah. So regarding this michya, the pasuk says l'chol mara einei akayin, that when a kayin sees the nega and he has to observe to know if it's or to see if it's tummy or not, he has to be able to see the whole nega at once. So if the nega is in a point in the body where he can't see the whole nega at once, so then the kayin can't see it, he can't be metamid. So therefore the Mishnah there says that there's the Estrim Rabbah, Rosh Evarim Sheba'adam, 24 tips of limbs of a person. So kulam ei metamim mishum michya. The kain can't be metama this nega if it's a michya because he can't see it all at once. Elohim, and these are the 24 tips of the limbs of a person. Rashi has boys, the tips of the fingers, that's why it's yadayim, that is from the hand. Viraglayim, the tips of the toes of the feet. Rashi has nayim, the tips of the ear, the edges of the ear. Reisha chaitim, the tip of the nose. Reisha gvia, the tip of the aver, of the bris. V'roshe dadim shabisha, the tips of the breast of a woman. Rabbi Yehuda says, af shebe'ish, by a man as well, even though it doesn't stick out as much, but it could be that you can't see it all at once. Now, v'tani Allah, here, so this was the Mishnah. Now on this, okay, so that's why it says before Masnita. On this, the Gemara brings the Braisa that said and added that Bekulam, regarding all of these that the Mishnah said, regarding the din of Negayim, Eved Yetzibem L'Chedus, any of these, if the master cuts off or knocks off, so he goes free. This is the din of the Rashi Evarim by the Eved. Now, Rabbi says, Af Hasirus. Also, if the master castrated his Eved. The Gemara is going to soon explain that what it refers to the Shaila that was asked before. Ben Azai says, Af Haloshin. Also, a tongue, even though a tongue you would think is inside the mouth, it's not considered to be an aver, a limb, or a part of the body that's exposed, but it is. The tongue, when a person speaks, is exposed, and when he eats, so therefore it's considered to be exposed that he'll go free. So the Gemara explains what Rebbe said to prove the shaila that the Sabed and the Zunya asked. Omamar, so it said here in the Braise, Rebbe said, Af Hasirus. That Sirus castrated as well, the Eved goes free. Now, Sirus Demai, how? How was this done? Ilem is Sirus the Gid, if it means regarding the actual Eved, that the master cut off. And therefore, he's Mesuris, that's how he was castrated. Hainu Gvia. So he said before already, regarding the Reisha Gvia, that's one of the tips of the Evadim. Lalav, Sirus, the Beitzim. What it means is the Shaila they were asking regarding the testicles, that if it was damaged, if it was removed, then he goes free. So here we see this, it says this in the Braisa. Now, because we brought this Braisa here, the Gemara goes back to explain the opinion of Rebbe and whether he agrees to Ben Azai regarding the tongue. So Rebbe said, Afasirus. That's for Sirus, the Eved goes free. But then after that came Ben Azai that said even the tongue is considered to be a part of the body which is exposed. So now, if Ben Azai comes after Rebbe, it sounds like that Rebbe disagrees with that. The Rebbe Loshen Loi, does Rebbe hold that the tongue is not considered to be a part that's exposed? But Veramino, I'll ask you from the Braise of what it says regarding sprinkling the waters of the Paraduma. Harei Misha Yemazev and Nitza Zal Piv. If you're sprinkling the water of the Paraduma and the water went on his mouth. Right, so over there as well, when you sprinkle the water and you have to be mitayidim, it also has to go on a place which is open in the body. And it went on his mouth. So Rabbi Yomer Hiza. Rabbi says even though it went into his mouth, but the Hazah takes effect and it'll be tar. Chachamim say lo Hiza. This is not a Hazah, he's not sprinkled properly and he's not tar. So here it says that Rabbi is saying it goes on his mouth and he's tar. My love al shaynai. When it says the mouth, what does the mouth refer to? Doesn't it refer inside his mouth on the tongue? And Rabbi is saying that the tongue is like a part of the body which is exposed and it'll be tar. So how could Rebbe before argue with Ben Azai and say regarding the tongue that it's considered to be inside covered and the Eved does not go free? Says the Gemara, that's not what Rebbe was referring to. Al Sfasa. When it says the mouth, it means the lips. The lips are exposed, but not the tongue. Frek the Gemara, Al Sfasa. Rebbe was talking about the lips. Pshita. I mean, that's something which is obvious that he should become tahir over there. And the question is on Rebbe, and the Gemara really could have asked also that on the Chachamim, how would the Chachamim argue on this? How could the Chachamim say that this Hazah does not take effect? The lips are obviously exposed. Says the Gemara, not necessarily. Ma'od Taime, I would say, according to Rebbe, Zimnin the Cholim Sfase. Sometimes a person closes his mouth tight and you can't see the lips. So therefore maybe the lips is not considered to be something which is always exposed. Kamash Malan, therefore Rebbe is saying that the lips are exposed and the Chacham are actually arguing on that. That's the pshat the Gemara wants to say in this Braisa here. So the Braisa is only talking about the lips, not about the tongue. But in another Braisa, we learned clearly that al shaynai, that it's talking over here about the tongue. When it said al piv, it means the tongue. V'oy tanya, another question from another Braisa, or this is a Braisa. Rashi brings it that it says b'negei to the mum by a b'chor. Halacha of a b'chor of a behema is as long as it's not a balmum, it has to be brought as a carbon on the mizbeach. But when the b'chor becomes a balmum, so then you can the kohen can eat it for himself. So over there regarding this b'chor, it says v'shenitel roiv aloshin. If most of the tongue of the animal was cut off, so then this is a mum, right? And over there by the b'chor as well, it has to be something which is exposed in order for it to be a mum. So over there it says if most of the tongue was taken off, so then it's a mum. Rabbi Yoime, and Rabbi says on that, the tongue has two parts. The tongue has the back part, which is connected to going down to the throat, and then there's the part of the front part of the tongue, which a human being speaks with it. We're talking here about an animal, but it's just using this expression regarding the front part of the tongue that a person uses to talk with it. So if that part of the tongue was removed, it's a mum. So we clearly see over here from these sources that Rabbi holds that the tongue is a part of the body that's considered to be begoli, exposed. So how could Rabbi before in the Braisa argue with Ben Azai that said that the tongue is not exposed? Elo, therefore the Gemara says the Pshar is different. Rabbi Oime Sirus, when Rabbi says that the Sirus, the castration, that's considered to be a mum begoloi, v'lemi boyaloshin. The Chiddush is regarding the Sirus, but needless to say that the tongue, that Rabbi agrees to Ben Azai, that the tongue is considered to be something which is exposed. And Ben Azai actually argued with Rabbi. Ben Azai says that the tongue is considered to be exposed, avol Sirus loy, but the Sirus of the Beitzim, that's not considered to be exposed. Now, umay af, when Ben Azai uses the term af haloshin, and he said that after Rebbe, it would seem like he agrees to Rebbe. It's not true. Af hakamaisa. The af that he said was going on in the beginning, on what was brought from the Mishnah, b'negei to all the Rashi Yevanim. So he's adding to that af haloshin, but he does not agree to what Rebbe said. Frek the Gemara, if that's the way we understand this, Rebbe agrees to Ben Azai, and Ben Azai does not agree to Rebbe, and he's going on before. So yachin nigdama de Ben Azai bereisha. The Tana of the Braisa should bring Ben Azai first, that he's adding to what it said in the Mishnah, and then afterwards to bring Rebbe, because Rebbe agrees to Ben Azai. That would be the right order. Says the Gemara, you're right, but Tana Shama le de Rebbe v'kova. The Tana first heard what Rebbe said, and he learned that he was kaveh the halacha of Rebbe. And then V'shama le de Ben Azai, and then he heard what Ben Azai said, and V'tani, and then he learned what Ben Azai said. And the way he learned that, the way that he put it originally in this order did not change. But the pshat really is the other way around, that Rebbe agrees to Ben Azai, and Ben Azai does not agree to Rebbe. Omar Ule said, Benigay, to what we were speaking about over here, the tongue of a person, whether it's considered to be open, an exposed part of the body, or a covered part of the body, Hakal Maidim, everybody will agree, Beloshin, regarding the tongue, Le'inyin Tumeh, when it comes to Tumeh, the Galui Hu Eitzel HaSheretz, that it's considered to be exposed regarding Tumeh of Sheretz. So by Tumeh as well, the halacha is, if any Tumeh touches a part of the person's body which is inside his body, that's called Beis Hastarim, it's not Metameim. Tumeh is only if the contact of the Tumeh was an exposed part of the body. So the tongue of a person that touched Tumeh is considered to be an exposed part of the body, then he becomes Tomei. My time, what's the reason? Asher yiga bayom rachmana. By Tomei, the Torah says, if it touches you, you become Tomei. V'hai nami barnegiyu. And this is considered to be a part of the body which a person touches things, he eats things with the tongue, so, and it's exposed in that sense. So it's considered to be exposed that it becomes Tomei. On the other hand, le'inyin tvile ketomendomi. When it comes to the halacha of toiveling and tefillah, there can't be any chatzitza, nothing separating between you and the water. Every part of the body has to be inside the water. So regarding that, the tongue inside the mouth of the person, you don't have to keep your mouth open for tefillah. And it's ketomon domi, it's covered and it doesn't have to be in the mikveh. My time, the Torah says that when you toivel, it uses the term that you're washing your flesh in the water. Ma b'sarei mavroi, just like the flesh of the person is on the outside. Avkol mavroi, it all only includes, tefillah is only the part of the body on the outside, not the tongue which is inside the mouth. So regarding these two, there's no machlokes. Where is there a machlokes about this? There's a machlokes regarding the tongue of the person, the machlokes of Rebbe and the Chachamim that was brought before in the Braisa, whether the tongue, if the Hazav, the Paraduma was on the tongue, whether that takes effect or not, there's a machlokes there only regarding the Hazav. Why? Rebbe medamala l'tumeh. Rebbe compares the halacha of the Hazav by Paraduma to the halacha of Tumeh, that it's considered to be exposed. But Rabbanan medamala l'tvila. And Rabbanan compares the halacha of the Hazav, Paraduma, to Tefillah, that the tongue is considered to be inside, and just like you don't need Tefillah for it, the Hazav on a tongue, if it lands on the tongue, it does not take effect. And the Gemara brings a source for their machlokes. V'tarvayu, b'hai krokam iflagi. They're both arguing how you learn this pasuk here, whether you compare it to Tumeh or you compare the hazah to tefillah. Because the pasuk says, "V'hiza hatoir al atome v'gaimer." This is by the paraduma. "V'hiza hatoir al atome." Now the continuation of that pasuk there is Vayem Shlishi, Vayem Shvi, and then it says v'chitoi, and he'll become toir by the hazah of the paraduma that goes on him. And then the conclusion of that pasuk is v'chibes v'gadov, and also his garments, and then v'rochatz b'mayim, and then he washes, he toivels in the mikveh. Okay, so it mentions in the pasuk the hazah. It also mentions tum in the pasuk, and it also mentions v'rochatz b'mayim, which is the tefillah. So now the question is, what do we compare to what? Rabbi says v'hiza hatoir al atame b'yem hashlishi b'yem hashvi v'chitoi. So it says the v'hiza, and it says that you sprinkle on the tamei, and it says v'chitoi, the hazah will work, that will become tahir. So Rabbi says we compare what it says in the pasuk here, v'chitoi, which means that the waters of the paraduma work. So we compare it to what it says, al ha-tomei, we compare it to tumah. Just like the tumah, if it touches the tongue, he becomes tomei. So to the v'chitoi, when it goes on the tongue, he becomes toir as well. Rabbanan say that you compare it to the continuation of the pasuk afterwards, because it says v'chitoi b'yom hashvi, and then it says v'chibes v'gada v'rochatz b'mayim. So you compare the v'chitoi, which is the waters of the paraduma that land on him, to the v'rochatz b'mayim. Just like the mikveh does not include the water going in the tongue, so too the chitui of the hazah of the paraduma does not work if it lands on the tongue. Now the Gemara explains what's the svaris to darshan the psukim one way or another way. But Rabbanan, according to the Rabbanan, you could ask, Nami nidamye l'tumeh, why doesn't he learn like Rebbe to compare it to what it says in the pasuk tomei? So he says, no, because the svara is tare mitare havale l'melav. It makes more sense to compare two things that are dealing with tare, the mikveh, which is a tare, and the hazah of the water, which is tare. The Rebbe, now, so the reverse, according to Rebbe, nidamye l'tfila, why wouldn't we compare the waters of the paraduma to tefillah if they're both the inyan of tare? So Rabbi will answer you in the pasuk. There's a break here. V'chibes begadov hifsek inyan. When it says v'chitoi, which is the waters of the paraduma, then it says v'chibes begadov. It talks about toiveling is begadim, and then it says v'rochatz b'sarai. So because there's a break here with this v'chibes begadov, we don't compare them. Now the Gemara asks on this: V'sava Rabbi, is it true what we're saying here that Rabbi holds le'inyan tefillah when it comes to toiveling? Ketom dami, that when a person tovels in the mikveh, so he keeps his mouth closed and the water does not have to go into the mouth and the tongue. Is that true? But for Amar Ravin, Amar Avade, Amar Rav Yitzchak, Maise b'shivcha shel beis Rabbi. There was a story with a maidservant in the house of Rabbi. Shetovla, she went to the mikveh, and also when she came out of the mikveh, v'nimtza etzem in shinel, and they found that there was a bone that was stuck between her teeth. And Rabbi said that she has to tovel a second time. So it seems that this is telling you that the bone that was there didn't allow the water to come into that place, and therefore you have to tovel again. So the water does have to go inside the mouth as well. Says the Gemara, no. The answer is as follows: You don't need that the water should actually go into the place of the mouth and the tongue. But it's necessary for there not to be any chatzitza inside the mouth, that it should be possible for the water to come there. And this is similar to a halacha that Rav Zera says regarding a carbon mincha. Rav Zera said, by carbon mincha, the bowl in the Beis HaMikdash contains 60 isarein of the flour and so on. So what if you have 61? So you can't put it inside this bowl because it's not going to mix properly. If when you mix it, it's gonna go out. So therefore he says as follows: If the amount of flour you have is enough, is the amount that if you mix it in the bowl, you're able to mix, so then you don't have to actually mix it. But if it's too much and you can't, it's impossible to mix it in this bowl, so then it's going to be makev. Then you're going to have to divide it into two different bowls to have the ability to mix it. And Taisus over here is ma'arich about this inyan. It's based on different psukim. Usually by kachim, the halacha is any halacha that it says in the Torah that you have to do for the karbanis for kachim. Only if the Torah writes it twice, then it's ma'akiv. Then that shows that it must be done for the carbon to be kosher. Regarding Belila, the Torah does write twice this concept of mixing the mincha with the flour and the oil. But the thing is, it never says it in the Torah with a language which is a tzivui, which is a command that you must do it. It writes it twice, but not b'loshen tzivui. And therefore, Rab Zayda says that the Torah is writing it twice, that it must be possible to do the Belila, to be a big enough bowl, but not that you have to actually do it. And similar over here, when you get to the tefillah, so over here there's a machlokes rishonim, how this is applied regarding tefillah. Why by tefillah does the same concept apply? Taisvus holds that by tefillah it's a similar thing that you see in l'shainis of psukim. There's two different psukim actually by tefillah. Some l'shainis of psukim show that it does have to go inside the mouth. Some l'shainis of psukim show that it does not. And therefore we compare and say that it has to be ra'oi, it has to be possible to come into every area of the mouth, but it doesn't have to actually go into the mouth. That's Taisus' explanation here to this Gemara. Other Rishonim though disagree and say that b'negei to tefillah, the fact that it has to be possible to go into the mouth is only a gzeirim midrabanan. Minat Torah, it's not b'chlal compared to the karbanis and by mincha, it's just a gzeirim midrabanan, so a person should know to be careful not to have a chatzitza. Right? And just to point out one more thing, how it's not the same to this halacha of karva mincha, over there's actually a mitzvah to do the blila. If you can, the you should do the blila. When it comes to tefillah, there's no mitzvah lichatchila to keep your mouth open that the water should go inside. You just have to make sure there's no chatzitza, but the water doesn't have to go into your mouth, not even lichatchila. Okay, the Gemara concludes this inyan that we started with b'nigeya to the siddur bebeitzim, that it's a machlokes tanoim. Ketanoi, we see that there's a brayse that there was an argument about this, because the pasuk says, and this is actually a pasuk that it says by the mum for karbanis by a b'chayr. So the pasuk there says umoch v'kostus v'nosuk v'kodes, which are different things regarding the beitzim of the animal, whether it's crushed and or kostus or. How do they translate? Squashed, crushed, or v'nosuk, v'kados. If it's torn, nosuk means it's torn. Kados means it's completely cut off. In all of these different expressions, the pasuk here says kulam bebeitzim. It all refers to the testicles of the animal that will make it a balmum. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. This is what Rabbi Yehuda says. So you see over here that Rabbi Yehuda held that this is a mum for the beitzim by the b'chayr. And this is considered to be a mum shebegali, because again, even by a b'chayr, similar to the other halachas we're speaking about, only a mum begali is a mum. So since he's saying it all applies to the beitzim, so we know it's a mum begali. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So now the Gemara explains what Rabbi Yehuda's opinion before it continues the brayse. Bebeitzim v'loi begid. So are you saying, this Rabbi Yehuda is saying that all these expressions in the pasuk here refers only to the beitzim and not to the gid, not to the actual aver itself? So no, ela kulan af bebeitzim. What he's saying is that all these parts of the pasuk here is talking about the gid and the beitzim as well. So that's Rabbi Yehuda, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says kulam begid. No, this entire pasuk is referring only to the actual aver itself, not the beitzim. Any of these things that are in the beitzim is considered to be covered, and therefore it's not a mum that will make it possible for a carbon. Rabbi Yossi says there's a difference. Moch v'kasos. So those are things that when it happens, if it's smashed or crushed, so that's something that you can notice on the outside. So af bebeitzim. So that's even by the beitzim, it'll be a mum. Nasuk v'kados. If it's snapped a little or it's totally cut off, but that's still inside the sack, so it begid in. If it's cut off, if the actual aver itself is cut, that's something you can see, it'll be a mum. But the beitzim like, but for the beitzim, this is not considered to be a mum because it's concealed, you can't see it. The next Mishnah will continue with halachas of kinyanim, because we began with ha'isha niknes, and then it went to the kinyan of an eved ivri, then the kinyan of an eved kanani, and now the next few Mishnahs here will discuss other kinyanim. It says, Zaktim Heilige Mishnah, Beheime Gasa, a large animal, like a big cow or a big horse and so on. Niknes b'mesira. How do you create a kinyan? By mesira. Now, the mesira means literally to hand over, to give over, and Rashi says what this means is you give over the leash, or you give over to the buyer that he should grab from the hairs of the animal. That's considered to be giving over. Now, from Rashi, it's mashma that the meicher, the seller, has to actually be there to give over the leash, and not only if the person takes it by himself. But Taisus brings that it's even if he takes it by himself without the seller giving it over to him. That's mesira. That's for large animals. Vahadaka, small animals like sheep and so on. Bagba. Over there, you kaina the animal by lifting up. Divrei Rab Meir, this is Rab Meir's opinion. Now, these kinyanim here, the difference is based on what's the derech of how you give over an animal. So a large animal, the derech is that it's done with mesira, and by a small animal, it's done by lifting up that animal. Rab Eliezer, again, Divrei Rab Meir v'Rab Eliezer, that goes together. This is Rab Meir and Rab Eliezer's opinion, or another gear says Rab Elazar. Chachamim say behemet daka niknas b'mishicha. By behemet daka, the way to be kind of these small animals is not by lifting it up, but by pulling it. You pull it to yourself, and you pull it. The mishicha is done in a place, in an open place, which is in the Rosh Hashanah or in a simta, on a side, and you pull it to yourself. That is the kinyan. Says the Gemara, Darash Rav b'Kimchunya. Rav darshaned. He was in a place called Kimchunya, and he darshaned and said the halacha behema gasa, large animals niknas b'mishicha. They're acquired with mishicha. Okay, so he's saying different than what it said in the Mishnah. In the Mishnah it said mesira. Now, according to Rashi here, Rashi doesn't say much about this, but Taisvis of it, there's a long Taisvis here about this Indian of mesira. So Taisvis says that Rashi's shitta is that when it says in the Mishnah mesira, so the Mishnah means dafka mesira. You have to give over the actual leash. That's the kinyan. Pulling it is not going to be a kinyan. Rashi's shitta is mesira is a better kinyan. It's more of a sign of acquiring something than just pulling it. So therefore, if the Mishnah says mesira, mesira means dafka. When Rav said b'mishicha, no. Mesira again is giving over the leash. Mishicha, which means pulling it. When Rav said mishicha, Rav was saying you don't have to have mesira. It could be even also with mishicha. That's according to Rashi. According to Taisus, it's the other way around. Taisus holds Meshicha, pulling something, is more of a sign of an acquisition. It's a better kinyan than Mesira. Okay, either way, the Gemara continues. So Ashkechin or Shmuel, the Talmid of the Rav. So Shmuel found the Talmidim of Rav, and he heard over from them what Rav said, that you can acquire a behema gasa, large animal, with Meshicha. So Omar Lahu, he said to them, Mi Omar Rav, did Rav say this, that behema gasa niknas b'Meshicha, that these large animals you can acquire with Meshicha? But v'hanan b'Mesirat. The Mishnah says that the kinyan is Mesira, and according to Rashi, Mesira means only Mesira. And additionally, he asked, V'Rav Nami, and I know that even Rav himself, b'Mesira Omar. In the past, he would say that the kinyan of large animals is only with Mesira. So the Gemara says, so he was asking, Hadebe Mehahi. This is part of Shmuel's question. He wanted to know, did Rav retract from what he would always say? So the Gemara says, yeah, because Huda Omar ki hai Tana. Because Rav held like the following Tana that's brought in the Braisa. The Tanya in the Braisa we learned another two opinions that were not mentioned in the Mishnah. The Chachamim say, Zu v'zu, the large animals and the small animals. Niknas b'Meshicha, the kinyan for both of them is only by pulling these animals. Rab Shimon Aimer, a fourth opinion here about this, Rab Shimon says, Zu v'zu b'agba. The only way to be kaina any animal, large or small, is only if you lift them up. So Rav was paskening like the Chachamim that says that the kinyan is with Meshicha. So now the Gemara asks on this, not Rab Shimon's opinion. Rab Shimon says, to be kaina an animal, you must lift it up. Maskefla Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef asks, practically, when you have a really large animal, ela meyata. If so, pil, an elephant. Rab Shimon, according to Rab Shimon, that says you have to lift up the animal to be kaina. How are you going to be kaina an elephant? Amalei Abaye. So Abaye answers, an elephant you won't be able to be kaina through this normal way of lifting up an animal. The chalipin, you're kaina with the kinyan of chalipin, which is the kinyan with a handkerchief, where the buyer gives the seller the handkerchief and he lifts it up, and that creates the transaction. The kinyan of chalipin works for every kind of kinyan, for karka, for metaltlin. So the only way to be kaina will have to be with chalipin. He says, or there's another option. If you want to acquire the elephant, so you can rent that space where the elephant is standing on, and now if the space that it's standing on belongs to you, you kain it with the kinyan of chatzar. It's your domain, so you kain it. That's another way to acquire this elephant. Rab Zayda tells you there's another option how to acquire an elephant. Maybe Arba Kalim, bring 4 different vessels, they're your vessels. Put it beneath its feet, and the elephant steps into these vessels. And now the vessels, since it's yours, so it's like he's standing in your domain, in your chatzar, because he's in your kalim. So you'll be kainet through your kalim, your chatzar. Says the Gemara, according to Rab Zayda's answer, Shamit Mina, so you can understand from what Rab Zayda said, Kalov Shalikeach, you have here these vessels of the buyer, but it's just meicher, but he's putting it under the feet of the elephant in the domain of the seller, because he's not renting the whole area. Kana lekeach, that the lekeach could acquire through this. And this is a shaila that's asked in other places. We spoke about this also in the Gemara of Gittin, when a woman wants to acquire her get from her husband. So could such a kinyan work? So the Gemara answers what Rab Zayda meant to say, he was talking about on the side of a Rishus Rabbim in a public domain. So it's not in his kalim are not in the Meicher or in any other person's domain. It's just in the side place of the Rishus Rabbim. Hinami, or the Gemara says, we had a question, how could you lift up a elephant? The Gemara says there's actually a way how you could lift up this elephant. And how is that? B'chaviles meiris. Put down a bundle of zmiris, of branches on the ground, and then the elephant steps up onto those branches, and that itself is considered to be a hagbah. So there's a machlekes between Rashi and Tosfos, this halacha of hagbah. When you lift up, to be kaineh, Rashi says you have to lift up 3 tvachim, because if it's not 3 tvachim, then it still can be considered to be lavud, connected to the ground. Tosfos says the lifting up has to be just 1 tefach. It doesn't matter if it's like connected to the ground. It's just an act of showing. It's the maisa. It's showing that you're kind of even just with 1 tefach. Another machlok is regarding this chaviles meiris. Rashi says you place the bundle on the ground and the animal steps up, and it's considered like you lifted it up because you caused the elephant to be lifted up off the ground. Tosfos says what the Gemara means is different. The elephant, this is the food of the elephant, it eats this. So you lift up the chaviles meiris into the ear high enough that it'll have to jump up to reach those chaviles meiris that it wants to eat. And you caused it to jump up. That's the hagbah that you kind of this elephant with.